I see a lot of companies, they just, we have to make our plan, we have to make our budget, so we'll acquire anything with a pulse and a business card, and then you have churn issues. And when you have churn issues, it's like, oops, your churn is killing your new growth. So stop doing that.
At Elements of Culture, we sit down with experts in leadership and team building to explore the DNA that drives a thriving organization. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elements of Culture. My name's Taryn, and I'm joined with my co-host, Julie, today. And we are talking with Alan Gonsenhauser. I hope I got that last name correct.
Perfect.
It's not as
Perfect.
difficult as mine, Alan. We're so glad to be chatting with you today. Alan is the founder and CEO of Demand Revenue. Alan, welcome to Elements of Culture. Tell us a bit about your background and why you love to coach and mentor in this season.
So thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here and nice to meet you both. So my background, I've been a chief marketing officer 11 times. I started in finance. My master's is in finance. So I always get along really well with CFOs as a marketing person. And I've been a P&L general manager a few times. Then I took a side thing where I was a CMO coach and mentor at an organization that was called Serious Decisions, which is a go-to-market advisory firm for the marketing, sales, product, and customer success functions. Spent 6 years there. The last 2, we were acquired by Forrester Research. Stayed on 2 years, and then I left and started my own business. Demand Revenue is the name of my company. It's at demandrevenue.com. And so what I do a few things. So I continue to mentor and coach chief marketing officers and chief customer officers. I've come on 4 times as an interim or fractional chief marketing officer. And I also help CMOs and CCOs with projects, things like repositioning, rebranding, go-to-market transformations, getting marketing and sales and other functions on the same page. So that's often an issue that companies have, and projects for CMOs and CCOs. So that's kind of what I do. I'm in the Boston area, but my remit is North America and Europe.
Okay. Love that. You mentioned one thing that just kind of stood out to me, Alan, amongst the extensive background. I love that you're doing the consulting side of it now because you can bring some of those experiences to the conversation. But you mentioned you have a financial background. And so going in and being able to have those conversations effectively with a CFO, I think sometimes, because here's what's happened that I've seen. Sometimes the marketing person and the CFO, they don't always see eye to eye on things. They
I
kind of
know.
butt heads a bit. And the marketing people, they always got these crazy ideas, right? The CFO is trying to rein everybody in. Well, we're excited to have a conversation with you. What started you out down this career path?
Of being a solopreneur, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, we were acquired by another company, by Forrester, and they wanted analysts basically to generate content all the time. And I'm far more entrepreneurial than that. I love growing businesses, and I was very segmented at the time, very healthcare focused. And I generated some content and did some writing, but doing it all the time for me would be like watching paint dry. So I left, and first time I've been a solopreneur, and it's almost 5 years now. So I love what I do. And I do a combination of the things I just mentioned. And, I learned that, you can make even more money than full time and really enjoy what you do and have a lot of flexibility. So I'm not going back to full time work. I love coaching and mentoring CMOs and coming on periodically as an interim CMO when there's a gap in leadership. Most of my work is with private equity portfolio companies in the SaaS software, enterprise software, and health tech and healthcare space.
Yeah, I love that. I don't think anybody who leaves and goes solo ever wants to go back. So I
Not
think,
going back.
yeah, I don't think anybody does. Alan, before the call, we were kind of chit-chatting about how you help companies with the customer experience and talking about how the way we approach go-to-market has changed in the last 10 to 15 years. And
Yes.
I don't know if everybody's on board with the new techniques and styles that are happening and understanding the their audience and their customer base. But I have been in rooms where great go-to-market strategies have been presented, and the first thing I think is great strategy, wrong customers.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about how the go-to-market has changed, how our market has changed in general, or what's led to those changes, and what do you predict is happening, and where are companies dropping the ball?
Yeah. So I've worked with hundreds of companies on that. And, um, go to market alignment is a huge economic factor of company success. In fact, one of the people that started Serious Decisions did a study of 400 B2B companies and found that companies that had really good sales, marketing, product, customer success alignment grow 19% faster and are 15% more profitable. So there's a huge economic value of alignment. And, it's the biggest factor that's holding growth back. And to your point about who you target, the most important thing to start off with is getting clarity and governance around your ideal customer profile, because you want to work with companies that are going to be easier to do three things. And I have a very simple mind. So you want to get companies that are easier to acquire. So you have better win-loss ratios, easier to retain. So you have better gross revenue retention, and easier to grow. So you have better net revenue retention. So get, keep, grow. And you need to be really specific about, which types of prospects and customers you're going to be able to keep. And that is, more than anything else, is correlated with your future financial performance. I see a lot of companies, they just, we have to make our plan, we have to make our budget, so we'll acquire anything with a pulse and a business card. And then you have churn issues. And when you have churn issues, it's like, oops, your churn is killing your new growth. So stop doing that. Understand where you can create a remarkable customer experience and be where your products are going to be a really good fit for the jobs that people are trying to get done, what their pain points are, and start there. So I see a lot of companies that don't have that go-to-market alignment, and it's common sense. If you do a good job there, everything else is going to follow from it. So that's the first thing I think to do. And I see
Yeah,
a lot of companies that have that issue.
yeah, I would agree. And I think in a past season, I worked with some small local businesses, and I think the thing that I always would hear is, well, everyone's our customer.
And no
Every,
one's your customer.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, everyone's your customer. That means no one's
right.
your customer. Exactly. And I think
Don't want to lose
sometimes
anything, so it's everybody. Try to boil the ocean. Yeah,
I know, but then you get out there with no strategy. And like you said, you're spending so much time and that churn is so high because you don't have the right customer. And I
right.
think businesses really do have to slow down instead of just trying to scale so quickly. And we actually had a recent conversation with someone and she said, you've got to slow down to go fast. And I
Exactly.
think you have to though, because if you're not taking the time to strategize like who your target audience is and what that messaging is, you can't just acquire because they will churn. And I think that I agree. I think that's where companies are making a mistake. So Alan, you're not new to this. What's your in your assessment when you are working with companies, you're coaching them, or whether you come on as a fractional CMO, like what are the first few things that you and you don't have to give away your secret, obviously, but what
Fine.
unless you want to, but what are some like key things that you're looking for a company that does have like a healthy go-to-market strategy where their churn rate is low? Like, what are the things that they're doing right from straight out the gate if it's a startup or, kind of a younger business?
Yeah. So I look to see if there's churn, first of all, but depending if it's a younger business, really there are three stages and pivot points that all companies go through. The first one is problem market fit. When you're a startup, can you appeal to companies that have a specific problem that they're willing to pay you for. So, and at that point, you're probably focusing a lot on demand and trying to get anybody because you don't know yet, and you're trying to figure out what your ICP is. So that's stage one. And if you're successful there and you have some customers and some use cases, then it goes from problem market fit to product market fit, where you have certain products that, deliver revenue to your company. And that's where you have to begin thinking about scaling and have repeatable processes, which you didn't have in the first phase. And then if you're successful with product market fit, if you're really successful there, you can move to platform market fit, which has even more value. And the questions you ask at each of these phases are different, going from problem to product to platform market fit. But all companies go through those stages, some more successful than others. Does that make sense?
It
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Thanks for bringing clarity to that. Go ahead, Julie.
Oh yeah, no, I was just thinking like one of the things that we always hear too is during scaling, there's great ideas for scaling being brought to the table, but scaling is not working, it's inefficient, it's burning people out. Talk to me a little bit about some of the companies you've seen and what are some of the mistakes they're making during scaling.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes back to ideal customer profile and understanding, because if you have governance and everybody is um, aligned on strategy, and part of strategy is what you say no to, you know, and it just makes everything so much simpler. So that's why I'm a big believer in ICP and have helped companies through that. But once you have that, it's kind of like picking the frequency before you turn up the volume. Then, when you scale, you look at use cases and you look at, not transmitting product selfies for each of your products, but understanding what the real pain points are of customers and what they care about and the jobs they're trying to get done. And I see a lot of companies at that point going from kind of a product orientation to a needs-based orientation, where you start with customer needs and then you bring in the products that are relevant to those needs or the jobs they're trying to get done. So that's where you begin to scale and you begin to have campaigns, fewer, bigger campaigns that integrate functions that a lot of companies kind of have tactics all over the place and they're reactive. And I call that the tactic treadmill, when, you're just kind of trying to do everything. But in order to scale, you want to organize the programs and tactics that you're doing into different areas of a campaign. So um, you've got programs that drive brand reputation early on, which are going to seed demand. Then you've got your demand programs to get both new business logos and to upsell and cross-sell your current customers. And that's the second area. And then the third area is customer engagement, where you build advocates and drive things like net promoter score and customer satisfaction, make sure that customers are actually using your product so they're not going to churn. And then the fourth is sales and customer success productivity, which are programs to help your sales force be more effective and productive. And if you combine them like that and you have fewer, bigger programs that are market based and pain point based, that will help you scale your business much better than if you have all these misaligned tactics that you're, being reactive about. So it helps you go from being reactive to proactive. A lot of the CMOs I mentor sometimes are very good at tactical execution, but they don't sit back and think about strategy enough and say, hey, why are we doing this? And what should we do more of? What should we do less of? And, what are the three things that are actually moving the bar on business results? So, yeah.
That's so good, Alan. I think sometimes, like you said, they don't take a seat and just kind of identify like where things going wrong. And sometimes I think in sales cultures, you're going too fast, you don't have time to.
Yeah, you've got
Or
a plan to meet. I know, I've been in sales, I understand, yeah,
yeah, yeah, you don't
but you
make
have to be
time for
strategic.
it. You don't make time for it. And so therefore you are reactive, right?
Yes,
Um,
marketing too. Yeah.
hmm Yeah. So when you are consulting with companies and based on your own, your personal experience, where are companies like where are they bottlenecking, with sales and within marketing? I mean, you talk about a lot of key areas, but like where do you see people them bottleneck and that really struggle to make a quick impact for revenue? Because I think sometimes when Julie mentioned scaling, you try to scale too quickly and you don't have that clear strategy lined out, that things just kind of bottleneck and then you become reactive to all the things that are going on. Where are the areas that you're seeing companies bottleneck where they really need to kind of put a focus on?
Well, some of the areas we've been talking about, not saying no to things, you
Yeah.
know, worried so much about making the next quarter's plan that they don't, sit back and say, "Hey, what are customers we can actually keep, you know, and grow?" And looking at cohorts of customers, once you get from, you know, um, problem to product to platform, looking at cohorts where you're going to be successful and learning, a big part of strategy is what are you going to say no to? And it's hard saying no when you have a quarter to make. And also, I see companies over rotating on demand and not investing enough in brand. And that's where I enjoy having conversations with CFOs because oftentimes CFOs can't see where you need to invest in brand because, oh, we don't see the immediate return. But, the conversation I have is, look, yeah, we're trying to make the current quarter. Do you want to have pipeline a year from now? Do you want to have pipeline 2 years from now? Do you want to have pricing power? Do you want to be at bats? If the C suite doesn't know who you are, you won't even be part of the conversation and you won't even have a chance. If you want at bats, if you want future pipeline, if you want pricing power, and oh, by the way, brand equity is an intangible asset on the balance sheet, Mr. or Ms. CFO. I mean, you know that, right? So I enjoy having those conversations. And oftentimes they say, well, I've never heard a marketing person talk like that. What
Yeah,
is it?
it's true though, because the CFO, they're looking at the bottom line. They're like, where's the
Yeah,
ROI? Like we're investing this much and this branding or whatever
right.
type of campaign, and they want to see how it ties back. And so I can certainly see the value that you would bring to that conversation to help them kind of draw the line for that investment. Because I totally agree with you. I think companies are not having enough conversation on the branding and what that branding and that investment on the marketing side and how that ties to the revenue for next year and the customers that are coming in next year.
Talk about accelerating results. If you have a baseline of a strong brand, that makes demand and everything that comes after so much easier. You'll be
Mhm.
in more deals. You'll have better win loss ratios. You'll have better pricing power. So it impacts so many things.
But
Man,
Alan, convincing a CFO brain works differently than a marketing brain. And so when I think about branding equity, to me, that's like, duh. Like to me, that's common sense because
yeah.
marketing wise, that makes sense. When we're trying to convince a CFO about branding equity, can you elaborate a little bit about how you're explaining that to him, even if it's pipeline? But I think a CFO is thinking, cha-ching, 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 what is this costing me now? And when will I see the return on investment on this, right? Like that's what they're really looking for. And how do you convince a CFO like, hey, now is the time for this? And what does, getting equity in your branding look like? Like, what does that really look like on the front end?
So one way I have that conversation is all CFOs know what net present value is and internal rate of return, which are capital budgeting metrics. This is very similar to that. You may not have the return this year right away, but the CFO's responsibility is not only maximizing this year's return, you're going to have next year and the year after that. So you need to look at long-term return in addition to short-term return. And that's what like net present value or IRR does, that CFOs are very familiar with. And in private equity environments, the most important metric is multiples on invested capital. So that's why things like ICP,
Mm-hmm.
picking the right customers, you're not only going to acquire this year, but you're going to be able to keep them, what their lifetime value is, and you're going to be able to grow them. And looking at metrics like LTV or lifetime value to customer acquisition cost, not just looking at the denominator, customer acquisition cost, is really critical. So I don't think there's no CEO I've ever spoken with that doesn't care about long-term returns, because that impacts your valuation and everything else, your multiples.
You have to speak their language.
Yeah, that really helps. And I coach a lot of CMOs to speak CFO.
Yes, how to speak CFO with Alan. that, that could
Well,
be its own show, Alan.
it's why I was actually on the Grow CFO podcast talking about the alignment between the CMO and CFO. And
Yeah.
it's encouraging functional leaders, whether it's a CMO or even a CSO, not to be just the head of whatever function they're responsible for, but to be a business leader and
Mhm.
think more holistically and aligned on what you need all the functions to do. So if you're a CMO, you shouldn't just be thinking about marketing. You should be thinking as a business leader. And that's the conversation I have with a lot of CMOs when I coach them.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that approach is so healthy because otherwise, when you have leaders of departments staying in that kind of siloed place, you're not as effective, right, as a team. And
No.
and there are even some companies where they're doing more kind of cross training, and so you're able to speak more of the same language.
Yeah.
You're building that rapport with other team members within the organization. But I do think every company looks different as far as where there's room to be able to do that, especially within smaller organizations or larger.
Yes.
Um, One question I wanted to ask you, and this is just off of my own experience and working in the world of marketing and advertising. I think sometimes when times get tough, economic times where we're in, I think sometimes the marketing budget is cut. Your advertising budget, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to brand, that's something that's like, well, that's not really impacting our revenue currently, so we're going to have to make some changes there. How do you coach companies that are kind of in that place and they're contemplating those budget cuts because they don't see the immediate return? What do those conversations look like?
So it's like passing people in the rain. Where you have economic headwinds, it's easy to cut the marketing budget because it's there and it can be a big budget. But what I say is you could do that. What's going to happen next year? And the companies that are very careful, you can always cut things. You can do a content audit and cut a lot of the content no one's using and is irrelevant. You can consolidate agencies. You can consolidate the MarTech stack. You can always take money out of marketing. And I'm a big believer in marketing being very good judicially of the assets that they have in their remit. But you should spend more. When you do that, you should spend more on things that impact the customer and understanding intent information and AI, things like that to make you more productive. But if you just cut discriminately, watch out because your competitors are going to pass you. And when the market improves, you're going to have to recover where your competitors are going to be ahead of you. You want to get ahead of your customers, your competitors during difficult times with economic headwinds. You can cut certain things, but then you should invest more in things that the customer will see and creating a remarkable customer experience. Or you're just going to be behind. You're always going to be playing catch up. So be careful. That's
Yeah,
the conversation I have.
Yeah, Alan, you brought it up. I'm really curious with all the consulting you're doing with so many companies and just making the customer experience better. Talk to me about how AI has affected that and what does it look like going forward? And so how do you educate companies in that area and how do you because we've meet two groups of people, maybe three, Taryn. We have AI, give me all of it. I want all of it. Like, give me all of it. They don't care what it looks like, what it costs. Like, they want all of it. We have another group that's like, well, what is this going to do? What does it do to my team? Does it create fear? Do they think they're going to be outsourced by AI? And then we do have companies that are just like they want to wait and see, which I don't think is the best approach. But when you're looking at companies, talk to me a little about how you're consulting and how moving forward, how you utilize AI or don't, depending on the market, and especially since you do a lot of SaaS companies as well. So that's why I'm asking. I'm curious to see what the future of that's going to look like.
I use AI all the time. It's it's a wonderful tool, and if it's used wisely, and any disruptive innovation throughout history is going to look like a threat to some, but you have to engage it in the right way. So it's great for content development. It's great to automate manual processes. It's really great at summarizing convergent information for you to spot things easier. It sucks at divergent information. So if you're looking to break through and do things differently, you still need humans with experience to do that because AI is going to assume the same thing happens over. Like, for example, if Eastman Kodak, right? They had the first patents on digital photography, but it was too much of a threat to their film business. Or look at Blockbuster and Netflix. You know, Blockbuster could have acquired Netflix, but it would have been too much of a threat to their late fee business, right? If you would have engaged AI in either of those situations, it would say, be more productive getting late fees and continue with film because that's the revenue. It won't break through and say, hey, do something completely different. That's what you need humans for. So the other thing AI can be dangerous is if you assume you can just throw AI at any process. If the process is broken or sucks or it's not right, AI is just going to speed up all your errors. You've got to fix the process first and then engage AI. So it's a wonderful tool for so many things, but don't use it for strategy because everybody's using the same LLMs. If you use AI to set your strategy, what's going to happen is your competitors will beat you to it because they're using the same LLMs. You know, you still need people, but the combination of people and AI is very powerful. So I'm not saying don't use it, but just use it wisely. There are things AI is wonderful at, and there are things you have to be careful. And it does hallucinate too, so you have to check it real carefully.
That's probably the greatest explanation of AI that I think I've heard. Because I tell people all the time, AI can't be innovative. It doesn't take over the human mind of innovation.
Right.
And so I think that's where people are over dependent on it. So you're kind of seeing the same thing. And we see it. We see it on the market. I can tell who's using AI for marketing and who's using AI for their ad ideas and how because they're all similar. And you can
Yes. If you go to my website, Demand Revenue, and you go to the resources section, there is a link that says AI thought leadership. And I did a series of 7 articles that talks about what we're talking about now, you know, the dangers of, you know, convergent versus divergent thinking and how to use and how not to use AI.
That's so good, Alan. So yeah, go to Demand Revenue
Demand
website.
Revenue.
I'm going there later, Alan. Because I agree, Julia. I think that explanation it simplifies it because we all know Blockbuster. If Blockbuster was so hung up on worried about late fees, I mean to think where they could be now and where Netflix is and the market share that they have. I
They
mean,
passed on acquiring Netflix. It was too much
yeah.
of a threat to their business.
Well, they thought it wouldn't take off. They didn't think this was streaming, like they didn't think streaming would be a thing, and they missed it. They missed
Right.
they could have done with that. And I think I still have a Blockbuster VHS or DVD sitting around here somewhere that probably acquired, a couple thousand in late fees at this point. But yes, they missed the mark. They were unable to see. And I think, Alan, you keep bringing this up is when you're talking to CFOs, you're talking to CMOs. What does it look like a year, 2 years down the line? How does this? It's a vision mindset. You have to have a visionary mindset.
Yeah, you can't just think the next quarter. What about after that? You're gonna, stop the business then? I mean, you're gonna need pipeline a year from now. How are you gonna get that? And if you don't have a brand, that's your future pipeline. So those are the kind of conversations I have.
I think people stay stuck in this place where they're fearful, right? They're fearful to take that healthy risk. And I think sometimes it actually it's almost necessary where you have to have that third party, someone like yourself, Alan, or someone who's kind of an outsider looking in, to be able to kind of have a different perspective. Because when you're in the day to day grind, you've got these blinders on, you're in the go, go, go mode, and you're not taking time to kind of reflect or to strategize a year out down the road. And I can say, even from I remember sitting, Alan, in strategy planning meetings, okay? And I'm like, what is this even accomplishing?
Right.
Are we actually
Why am I
planning
here?
for next year? They were painful. And then I think back and I'm like, wait, in the last strategy meeting, did we actually implement anything that we sat around and planned for hours or for
Right.
weeks at a time? Like, why do we do this? To check a box and say, okay, we had our strategy planning meetings. So people could be more effective, I think, when they're having someone who's an outsider, an unbiased kind of opinion to say, hey, let's think about things differently. Let's consider what risk would look like so we're not missing the mark. And so we're taking into consideration what competitors are doing and what's going to be happening. How is it going to be impacting our business? But like you
Yeah,
keep saying, the customers.
exactly. And and it also helps not being in the politics too.
Yes, 100%. When you're in the politics of it, in the day to day of it, you don't always have that healthy outside perspective for sure.
And sometimes people need a little tough love. Not that I, and do it on purpose, but sometimes it's really necessary and very valuable, to help companies think differently. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. The one position I was at, I remember my team, I was very fortunate. We had an outside consultant who, because sometimes there is politics that goes on in corporate settings, and sometimes that outside party can help navigate even some of
Yeah.
those conversations, like you were saying, just the language between the CMO and the CFO. I think that companies do need to consider investing in those relationships and those partnerships with an outside consultant, because I think someone in your position, Alan, you do bring tremendous value to the success of an
Thank you.
organization because you can help navigate some of those tough places. And it brings an unbiased party and insight, because when you have somebody who has that experience talking with lots of companies and has their own personal experience, it that's invaluable.
A lot of it's common sense. It
Don't
really
discredit
is.
yourself, Alan.
Alan,
No, but a lot of it is. It's just
I have a theory about common sense. Okay, this is what I've learned: that what's common for you is not what's common for me. And so I think I agree with you. Sometimes me and Taryn do this. Like, we're like, well, why is this hard for you to figure out? But I
yeah,
realize people just have not been exposed and to the same things. And so I think
yes.
common sense. I don't know if we can use that anymore, because the generations in the workspace, like I don't think we can use that word common sense anymore, because what's common, I literally had a conversation with this young lady. She's still in college, and she was trying to help me navigate an app. And to which she kind of looked at me and she's like, I can't believe you don't know how to do this. And I remember
That's not a
thinking,
nice thing to say.
well, yeah, but then you know what I said? I was like, I can't believe you think it's important to know how to do this. Like and so
A great conversation, right? Memorable.
I said, I'm part of the outsourcing crew. Like, if I don't know how to do this, I'm going to ask some questions and learn it. Like, I'm not afraid of not knowing. And so
Yeah.
I think it's just an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think people are not asking questions. I think as they should be. And I
Yeah.
think the lack of questions is creating what I think right now, and not understanding the times and what people are going through. I think understanding empathy and having awareness of what's happening in society.
Yes.
Um, I think COVID was a reality check for a lot of people, because I think you assume that people went through COVID the way you went through COVID. And that could be, it was hard for you, it was easy for you. I'm
Yeah.
an introvert. I was thriving in that season while everything was getting canceled. I was living the time of my life, at home. But it was very difficult for people, and companies had to come across this new thing that they had to deal with. And I think new things are hard for people, and it's hard for
Yeah.
companies.
They are. Yeah. You have to bring people along. So also less is more, you know, focus on the few things that matter.
Mhm.
A lot of people forget that. They try to do too much, just way too much, And then if you try to do 10 things, you'll probably do 3 well, but those wouldn't be the same 3 you would pick if you'd say, what are the 3 you really want to get done well? So,
Mhm. Well, I think that also leads to burnout and, you're not really, like you said, you're not being effective.
yeah.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for this conversation. Before we wrap up, because I do think that you bring so many valid points just to the approach companies need to take with understanding the value of marketing and how that really ties to the success of an organization, and identifying those places of importance to really put your focus on. But before we wrap up, when I have this conversation with you, Alan, you seem kind of like this general in the place of like marketing, and how to navigate difficult conversations. And I'm sure you have tons on your website that people can reference later at their
I
own
do.
time. And thank you for that. Thank you for mentioning those resources. We'll definitely check them out. But throughout your career, maybe there was someone who kind of gave you some advice along the way, or maybe it's something that you've come across through your own life journey. What would you say to those that want to focus on less and do a better job at those things that really are important, whether they are new in leadership or whether they're seasoned in leadership? What would you encourage people with as we wrap up today?
Probably 2 things. One is don't be afraid to get cross-functional experience. To the extent you can move from one function to another to begin to appreciate what people are dealing with, that never hurt me at all. I started in finance, I went into a little bit of consulting and marketing, then sales, then back in marketing, then I had some P&L GM, but my cross-functional experience always helped me. And the other thing, don't be afraid to try things when you have an opportunity. And my favorite quote is from Churchill, and it's the definition of success is moving from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
Mm.
I've had that in my career where I've had transitions, always ended up better, but don't be afraid of failure. Try things and get diversity in your career, and that will serve you well over time. Maybe not immediately, but you will know over time that those experiences really help you, and you learn from failure as well. So don't
Abs-
don't don't try to be perfect, and be open to opportunities and be flexible to them as they come up in your career.
That's so good. So, Alan, are you open to doing life coaching sessions with myself?
Hey, if
you
you'd
know,
like, let me know.
I think that's a struggle for many. Just speaking for myself, but sometimes you're too hard on yourself and you strive for
Oh yeah,
perfection instead of being okay with failure. And it's so good. I think that's such great advice: is be okay with the failure and have enthusiasm doing so, because I think that just sets you up for the next adventure, right?
yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us. This conversation has just been amazing.
Thank you. My pleasure.